The year is 1973, and I'm about to post maybe my most controversial video to date. This channel is dedicated to chronicling the history of hard rock and heavy metal and righting historical wrongs that the Grammys never appreciated. But in 1973, the hard rock world, and in particular the southern hard rock world, is going to put on a dominant performance. Will the heavy metal side of the fence be able to keep up? Find out next. Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to a very different episode of the Metal Dude Abides. Why is it different? Well, there's two big reasons. The first reason is we have been going through year by year looking at who was the best bands of the year, who should have brought home the Grammys, etc. And what we've seen all the way back to 1969 is we've basically been chronicling the dominance of the British Big Three: Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple. While we've nominated other bands, it's really been clear that the competition's between those three bands, not really anybody else. So some years Black Sabbath wins, some years Led Zeppelin wins, and some years Deep Purple wins. But it's been completely a wipeout for the British Big Three for going on 4 or 5 years now. In 1973, we're about to see a shift. We're about to see some real competition for these bands in the forms of several newcomers that we hadn't seen previously. So that's number one. And we'll get into who they are here in a second. But before we reveal that, we also need to talk about the music scene in 1973. Because, again, while Black Sabbath is clearly heavy metal, they're about it. Them and Budgie, right, are about the only heavy metal bands going on at this time. So what we're really talking about is who's in that hard rock family. That includes heavy metal and hard rock. So, for instance, Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. Purists would say not heavy metal, but we're putting them in the same category because that hard rock, heavy metal connection is approximately the same family back in the day. And there's a slight alteration of that because we also have southern hard rock. And we haven't touched on that a lot, but we've seen the Allman Brothers, for instance, get some nominations here and there. Southern hard rock was partnered with your traditional hard rock and your heavy metal. If you don't believe me, let's just say that there were tours back in the 70s that had bands like Black Sabbath and the Outlaws together because it was one big hard rock family. So this episode, we're going to see some pretty interesting results because the biggest, baddest southern hard rock band of them all has just come on the stage. We'll get to that in a minute because our first nominee will kind of reveal all because it's Newcomer of the Year. All right, no more cryptics, no more hints. 1973 Newcomer of the Year. It's a runaway. It's a Hall of Fame runaway. The great, the legendary, the biggest, baddest southern hard rock band of them all, Lynyrd Skynyrd, blows onto the scene with a tremendous debut album, debut song. We'll talk about a lot of this in the categories, but I just want to say that when you look at southern hard rock, again, we've had some brief interactions with them, with the Allman Brothers and some others, but this is really when southern hard rock just goes, explodes onto the scene. Lynyrd Skynyrd was a game changer. And the Grammys didn't see it. The Grammys that year nominated Bette Midler, the Divine Miss M. Now, Bette Midler is probably known more for her acting career than her singing. she was a hot act for a while, but I don't think that when you look at what the impact Lynyrd Skynyrd had on the music industry to this day, I don't see how you can give it to anybody else. So not only is Lynyrd Skynyrd going to win Best Newcomer in the hard rock category, they're also going to win it in the overall Grammy. They have to. What they did in 1973 is unbelievable. And we're going to talk about it a little bit more when we start talking about Instrumentation of the Year. All right, let's get into it. The 5 nominees for Best Musical Performance in alphabetical order. We start with Great White Buffalo by the Amboy Dukes. For those of you who may or may not be aware, the Amboy Dukes was the first band that introduced the world to Sweaty Teddy the Nuge, Ted Nugent, one of the greatest guitar players in the history of rock. Great White Buffalo became a song that he did on his solo career, part of the famous Double Live Gonzo, and really a part of his live act for many years because it's a sensational song. And again, what a way to be introduced. Ted Nugent, Amboy Dukes, Great White Buffalo. Second, it wouldn't be a musical performance nomination list if we didn't have some amazing riff from Tony Iommi. And this here's one of my favorites. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath is kind of starting to move into a more progressive style, but boy, Tony Iommi can still bring those classic, heavy, bluesy riffs. And Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath is a poster child for this. One of my favorite opening riffs in the history of the Sabbath collection. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath had to be in the nomination list. And then there's Lynyrd Skynyrd. We've been talking about it. Let's get to it. 1973, Best Musical Performance, Freebird. Growing up, there were 2 songs that were considered the 2 greatest hard rock songs of all time. Stairway to Heaven, which we talked about just a couple of years ago, and Freebird. Why is Freebird such a iconic song? Why is it considered one of the best songs of all time? Because the guitar solo in this song is one of the best guitar solos you're ever going to hear. I always laugh because I do get sucked into the reaction videos every once in a while, and I love watching people react to Freebird for the first time because it really kind of starts off slow, and it's, you don't see what's about to happen before it happens, and when it hits you, it's too late. This song goes from kind of a sleepy, what are we doing here, to a holy cow, this is a great guitar solo, to a holy cow, this is a guitar solo that just keeps on going and getting better as it goes. This is peak performance guitar solo. Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd. Another band, I mean, there's so many new bands here, but another one is Montrose with their song Space Station Number 5. This is one of the best bands going. This is one of the best albums going. We'll talk about it in a minute. Gary Montrose puts this band together with a young vocalist. You may have heard of him, Mr. Sammy Hagar. And they just put out a scorcher album. And this is one of the best songs on it. Great guitar work on this one. Space Station Number 5 by Montrose. And speaking of great guitars, speaking of great riffs, speaking of great opening riffs, boy, and going back into the Southern Rock catalog, ZZ Top with LaGrange. I have had so much fun with this song over the years. First time I heard it was one of the most iconic moments, music moments of my life. The dude had a great stereo system, and we were just jamming to this song. This is Billy Gibbons' best riff of all time, and it is if this were any other year, it would be a runaway. But boy, it's got some stiff competition this year. So our fifth nominee, ZZ Top with La Grange. And the winner is Alan Collins, Gary Rossington, Take Your Bows. Free Bird by Lynyrd Skynyrd. Great competition. Like I say, LaGrange, Billy Gibbons, such a great, any other year would have just blown everybody off the stage. You have one of my favorite Tony Iommi riffs, and like, it wasn't even close. This song, that guitar solo is so legendary. There's no way. It had to win. It is considered one of the greatest, forget hard rock songs of all time, greatest rock songs of all time, and it's because of that guitar solo. So congratulations to Lynyrd Skynyrd. But let's go to best vocal performance next. This is another of those unbelievable competitions. One of the best years for vocalists in the history of rock. Just a little side note. We had talked last week about the fact that Robert Plant had dominated this competition, had won it like 3 years in a row, but Led Zeppelin did not put out an album in 1972. So even though Robert Plant's not the defending champs, he kind of is coming back to defend his title after a year's absence. And who else should be in this category? Potentially the defending champion, Ian Gillan from Deep Purple. So you kind of have two, not just one, but two defending champions coming into this. And boy, the competition is unbelievable this year. Let's get to it. Our first nominee is another newcomer to the stage, Aerosmith with the song Dream On. Steven Tyler has had some great songs, some great vocal performances over the years. I don't know that any of them touch Dream On. Right off the bat, Aerosmith established itself as one of the up-and-coming bands and going to have a Hall of Fame career going forward. It all starts right here with Dream On, Aerosmith, our first nominee. Our second nominee is the defending champion, Ian Gillan and Deep Purple, with the song Woman from Tokyo. Just being completely honest here, Deep Purple, this is kind of their hurrah, their final act as a band. The Mark II edition of the band anyway. They're kind of hating on each other, and this is kind of their last little bit. But My Woman from Tokyo is such a great song. If you're going to go out with a banger. I love this song to death. One of my favorite Mark II Deep Purple songs of all time. And he's back. Robert Plant, who never lost the title, so he's kind of, again, also the defending champion. He's back. Led Zeppelin puts out Houses of the Holy and the song Over the Hills and Far Away, one of their best songs ever. And Robert Plant just brings such a smooth presence to this song. Love Robert Plant's voice. He is going to give us fits for the entire decade. What a force in the vocal performance. However, if you asked people who the greatest vocalist of all time was, if you asked them for sure who the greatest vocalist from the 70s was, a lot of people are going to go with Freddie Mercury. What a tremendous singer he is, with just dynamic range and charisma. He comes onto the scene as Queen does their debut album, and he has the song Keep Yourself Alive, a really great song. And again, another, here we are, here's Queen, check this song out. This is going to be a Hall of Fame type of band and career. So again, so many debuts, and finally, we're going to have a legendary band come in here. Love, Reign Over Me, The Who. Again, I'm not a huge The Who fan, I've had, they have, moments of brilliance, though. To me, this is Roger Daltrey's moment of brilliance. He sings this song so beautifully, so powerful, that it had to be on the list. So, our final nominee, Love, Reign Over Me by The Who. And the winner is... Move Over, Ian Gillan. Move Over, Robert Plant. The winner is Aerosmith, Dream On. Now, at the beginning of this episode, we talked about how this used to be such a dominant performance between Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. This is a great example of how things just all of a sudden in 1973 started to shift. You've got two artists last year that came in, right? We saw Klaus Meine, we saw Ronnie James Dio come onto the scene. Then this year we've got Steven Tyler and Freddie Mercury coming onto the scene. This is no longer just a dominant three-team field. We've got greatness everywhere. Congratulations to Aerosmith. This is not an easy win. Really, you could make an argument for any of these bands. Hell, Roger Daltrey is a Hall of Fame singer. This one was his, in my humble opinion, you can't find a better singing performance than this one from Roger Daltrey. Very tempted to go with him as well. So a really stiff competition in the best vocal performance category. But Steven Tyler, this is that song that really, says this is going to be a dominant singer for the next, think about it now, 30, 40 years, still one of the great singers of our time. Now, the Grammys that year made an interesting choice. Stevie Wonder with You Are the Sunshine of My Life. Stevie Wonder, one of the best singer-songwriters that you're ever going to see. But I do question, this is a great song, by the way, one of my favorite songs of Stevie Wonder. But is this really a great vocal performance? It's a great song, great composition. I think I'm going to have to go Steven Tyler across the board. And quite frankly, any of those five hard rock, heavy metal singers, I think would have to be in the best vocalist talk as well. Stevie Wonder, again, I'm not going to argue the greatness of his albums, his music, or his songs. But as far as a singer goes, he's great. But what some of these guys like Robert Plant and Steven Tyler, and the list goes on, right? Just knocking it out of the park year after year. So not only does Steven Tyler and Aerosmith win Hard Rock Vocalist of the Year, they also win across the board in the general categories as well. Again, congratulations to Steven Tyler. A hard-fought victory. Now let's move to Song of the Year. And I think that what we're seeing now is there's so much music coming out. We're seeing it left and right, all these great bands, that I'm going to do something different this year. We're going to have a top heavy metal song and a top hard rock song. So let's start with the top hard rock song of the year. All right, best hard rock song. Our five nominees are the previously aforementioned Dream On by Aerosmith, their signature song, if you will, and, again, a signature vocal performance in this one by Steven Tyler. Our first nominee, Dream On by Aerosmith. Our second nominee, it puts a smile on my face. I love this song so much. Golden Earring with the song Radar Love. For those of you who have been on long road trips before, if you've ever been out on a lonely highway, I was raised up in New Mexico, lots of space out there. Fifth largest landmass, not probably in the top 40 in population, so lots of highway. You get a song like Radar Love going. Love that song. Uh, been covered many times, but the original is still the best. Our third nominee, We're an American Band by Grand Funk Railroad. Grand Funk, very popular band in the 70s. Has not maybe stood the test of time as far as people talking a lot about them today. But oh boy, were they a great band. And this was their kind of iconic breakthrough song. I love it. Nominee number 3, We're an American Band, the Flint, Michigan Grand Funk Railroad. Again, back to, we had talked so much about the British Big Three ad nauseum. And look at all these, tremendous bands coming out of the USA. Really good stuff. Speaking of which, nominee number 4, we've talked about this song, Freebird by Leonard Skinner. Arguably one of the top, a real contender for greatest hard rock song of all time right here. Freebird is going to be a tough one to beat, I'll tell you right now. And finally, we talked about this one a little bit earlier as well, LaGrange by ZZ Top. Billy Gibbons with the riff of all riffs. Yummy stuff. And the winner is... To this day, if you go to a hard rock concert and the lead singer says, "What song do you want to hear?" someone invariably is going to yell out Freebird. And we're going to yell it out right here. The winner, 1973 Best Hard Rock Song of the Year, has to be Leonard Skinner, Freebird. You just can't beat this song. This is, again, Stairway to Heaven, Freebird, greatest song of all time. Those two are really heavy contenders for that. But look at this lineup of songs. Oh my goodness. Just absolute, some of the greatest songs of all time right here. Really stiff competition to the point where I pulled the heavy metal guys out and gave them their own category. Speaking of which, let's go talk about the best heavy metal song of the year as well. One of the biggest heavy metal bands going in the 70s was Alice Cooper. And they put out their incredible album, Billion Dollar Babies. And off that song is one of his most iconic and kind of hilarious songs of all time, No More Mr. Nice Guy. If you've never heard this song, I recommend you go out right now, pause this, go listen to this song. Hilarious. The lyrics of it really are the first time that we really see Alice Cooper kind of, taking a jab at his own image. I love it when he ends up going into church incognito, and the preacher punches him right in the nose, and he says, "No more Mr. Nice Guy." Love that line. Makes me laugh to this day. Alice Cooper, No More Mr. Nice Guy. The next nominee is not going to be a surprise here. Black Sabbath with Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Every year we have to have a Black Sabbath riff. Tony Iommi always delivers. This year, while they put out a pretty good album, I think by far my favorite song on here is Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and by far my favorite riff, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. So they are the second nominee. The third nominee is again another one of those young up-and-coming metal bands, Blue Oyster Cult, with their song Red and Black. Canadian Mounties, baby, a force that works. Whatever that line is. Love this song. Early Blue Oyster Cult is probably a little bit more miss than hit for me, but you can see the talent. You can see the songwriting ability. Boy, they had the ability to just write the catchiest, heaviest songs going. And every album, they at least nail one great song. To me, on this album, it's the Red and the Black. My fourth band is a very heavy band. We talked about him a little bit back in 1972, but I don't understand how this band didn't get over. I'm talking about the Australian powerhouse Buffalo and their song Shylock. One of the things that I think in 1973, talked about this a little bit, Black Sabbath starts to move away from that heavier, doomier stuff into a little bit more of a progressive mix. To me, that left a little bit of a vacuum. This band is the heaviest band in 1972. Buffalo just comes in and just pours it on. And this song is particularly catchy and particularly heavy. Shylock, if you haven't heard this band, because, after this, they kind of have a couple of fizzled out albums, never really make it to the big time. Their first album was very good. This is even better. I love this song, Shylock, our fourth nominee, Buffalo. And finally, Deep Purple, Woman from Tokyo. Again, we alluded to this a little earlier as well. This is the last album of the Mark II Deep Purple. And this is like their last big hurrah song. Love Woman from Tokyo. They're, again, a great song by this band. And the winner is... Ladies and gentlemen, we've got an upset alert. It is, as we're recording this, we are in the throes of March, time for a little basketball March Madness, upset special. We're going with Shylock from Buffalo. This is heavy, it's catchy, it's riffy, it's everything that I want in music and more. This is leading the heavy metal charge into the mid-70s. Don't know why this band wasn't a little bit more popular, but I'm going to right some wrongs on this channel. And one of those is giving Buffalo their much deserved and much belated flowers. Wherever you are, Buffalo, you guys should have been bigger. You should have gotten a lot more recognition than you did. I'm going to give it to you today. Upset special, Buffalo, with the song Shylock. Now, I didn't talk about it on the original, but I will talk about it now. The Grammys that year went with the song Roberta Flack, Killing Me Softly. We talked about Roberta Flack, I think last year, also won the Grammy. Great singer. However, when we talk about Song of the Year, it has to be Freebird. It has to be the greatest rock song of all time. Has to be the winner. So with all due respect to Roberta, we're going to go with the boys from Florida. From Tallahassee, I believe. Leonard Skinner, Freebird, Song of the Year. Speaking of which, let's go to Album of the Year and see who brings then in the big prize. All right, many people consider this to be his best. I'm among them. Our first nominee for Album of the Year, Alice Cooper with $1 Billion Babies. This is the title track. I almost went with the title track for Song of the Year. That's how good it is. We talked a lot about No More Mr. Nice Guy. This song had, was right at the point where Alice Cooper was just breaking big all over the place. And this album was a big part of that. Our first nominee for Album of the Year, Alice Cooper, $1 Billion Babies. Second up, Black Sabbath with their album, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. This is another remarkable album in the Black Sabbath collection. We really saw the band come out, kind of that horror-themed Black Sabbath. Very sensational, big hits in Paranoid. And then slowly but surely, we see the doomy metal. that made up Master of Reality. We see kind of the beginnings of maybe a little bit of the move towards progressive with Volume 4, but here we are. This is full-blown progressive by Black Sabbath. And again, one of the things that you start to see with Sabbath is they kind of lighten up their sound a little bit as well. Not nearly as heavy, not nearly as doomy as the first 4 albums, but this is a great album. The highlight, of course, being the title track, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, but there's a lot of really good songs on here as well. So our second nominee, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Our third album, it's pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. The boys from Tallahassee, Lynyrd Skynyrd, with their debut album. Again, I don't know if anybody knows this or not. It's kind of maybe, old facts here. Lynyrd Skynyrd was the name of the boys' high school gym teacher. So there you go. Don't shout out to Mr. Lynyrd Skynyrd, high school gym teacher extraordinaire. This is, of course, known for Freebird, but again, Lynyrd Skynyrd has some great songs on this album. Simple Man, covered many times. Really good vocal work on that one. Gimme 3 Steps. There's more to this album than just Freebird, and they definitely deserve a Best Album nominee for, again, pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. I love this album. It is the self-titled Montrose. We are introduced to the great vocalist Sammy Hagar. This song has fun song after fun song. It's pretty heavy. You have everything from Red, Bad Motor Scooter, Space Station Number 5. The list goes on and on. Rock Candy. This is a tremendous album. Really ahead of its time. And again, ushered in a new era of kind of really catchy hard rock that would dominate in the mid-70s. And finally, that little old band from Texas, ZZ Top, with maybe their greatest album of all time, Tres Hombres. Again, known for LaGrange, but there's so many other good songs on here. Jesus Done Left Chicago, Waiting for the Bus, Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, the list goes on and on. Great album from ZZ Top. Really started to establish themselves as a major force in the hard rock industry at this point. And the winner is... What do you say? It's just the year of upsets. 1973 Album of the Year award winner goes to Montrose for their debut self-entitled album. We talked about all the hits on this song. It just goes on and on. There's not a bad song on this album. One of those albums you consider to be a perfect album. So while pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd had some great moments to it, ZZ Top had some great moments, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath had great moments, I think consistency of the Montrose album wins the day here. Very underrated, very sneakily good album of the year. Congratulations to Montrose. Again, 1973, the competition is really stiff. And anybody that can pull down the award this year really deserves something. Again, moving away from the dominance earlier in the decade to like it's wide open. Like we could see different winners every year going out. Really good stuff. Now, the Grammys that year, Album of the Year, was Stevie Wonder with Inner Visions. And again, kudos to Stevie Wonder, one of the greatest rock artists of all time. I don't know about this particular album. I kind of like some of the stuff he was doing earlier. Maybe a little bit better than this one. This almost seemed like, believe it or not, a little bit of a makeup because he had put out so many really good songs and albums up to this point. But Stevie Wonder's not going to win Album of the Year. And neither's Montrose. Because even though I'm going off script a little bit, I'm going off into the hinterlands on this one. 1973 saw Pink Floyd put out Dark Side of the Moon. Now, I'm always making fun of the Grammys. We talked about the fact. Here we are. They missed Freebird, one of the greatest rock songs of all time. Missed it. Didn't even nominate it for anything. They missed the rise of ZZ Top, a band that's going to become, again, Hall of Fame level career, and their signature moment with LaGrange. Again, we talked about they didn't know Black Sabbath existed. Okay, fine. That's neither here nor there, I suppose. They didn't even nominate Dark Side of the Moon. Like, you really start to sit here and you go, Stevie Wonder and Roberta Flack, pretty good. I'm not here to say that Stevie Wonder didn't deserve awards or Roberta Flack didn't deserve awards, but how do you at least not nominate Pink Floyd? How do you not nominate ZZ Top? How do you not nominate Lynyrd Skynyrd, Led Zeppelin? We're going to go through the entire decade. The Grammys aren't going to recognize Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, none of those bands the entire decade. ZZ Top, I don't think they nominate or award them either. You really have to wonder, what in the world were the Grammy people listening to? Who knows? I can't right all the wrongs, people. I'm just going to give you a few. So I'm going to go a little bit off the beaten path. I'm not going to talk just about who the Grammys nominated or just the hard rock side, because Dark Side of the Moon should have won Album of the Year, and it's not even close. So there you go. What a tremendous year in music. Lots of good stuff from the rock world. And again, from this point on, things really start to get exciting. The competition just really starts to heat up, where it's tough to get on this nomination list. There was a lot of really good music that did not see the light of day. And we're going to be talking about that in future years as well, as we go through 74 and on. Stay tuned to this channel, because it's really going to be some exciting discussions. But before we talk about future years, this is a great time to subscribe to the channel. Give this a thumbs up. This was a good year for music. Let's give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel so you'll see all this exciting content as it comes out year by year. Ring the bell. Get notifications of when we put out new materials. Every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we are here cranking out the tunes, telling you about all the great music that exists in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and up till 2024. So join us. Come in. We have a small but mighty little group that talks about music. We'd love to have you. In the meantime, this is the Metal Dude signing off. Take care. We'll be back next week. We'll be talking about the year 1974. Take care.